What was your high school's wildest NSFW scandal? All these pedophile teacher stories, and all my high school did was start a rumor a girl named Janie didn't have a butthole. I went to a charter school in PA. The founder stole hundreds of thousands of dollars from the school district and used it for himself. In the back of the school, he built an apartment with a stripper pole, but it was hidden in the school. You could only get to it through one door hidden in a closet. He was eventually caught stealing money and he committed suicide. This was a year or two after I graduated, but there was this one teacher at my high school who was fired for, in no particular order of weirdness, buying booze for students, smoking weed with students, buying weed for students, buying weed from students, writing a paper for a student for a different class in exchange for weed, driving certain students who skipped school to a bar in a different city several hours away, sending a student a completely unsolicited text that said, "I've never wanted to cheat with anyone in my life, but I want to with you," offering to buy a student a $500 knife and give it to him at school, explaining it thus: "If I can walk around campus with marijuana on me, you can walk around with a shipping box with a knife in it. Kiddo, you can't walk around campus with marijuana on you." She was the scripture teacher. That position, at that school, at least when I was there, was as cursed as the defense against the dark arts job at Hogwarts. The soccer coach was sleeping with 4 of the soccer players, 16 to 18 years old, 2 of them being other teachers' daughters. They had it completely secret until his wife found a journal where wrote about each time he slept with each girl on the team. At the end of the school day we walked out and there was 4 to 5 cop cars and they were walking him out of his building in cuffs. If I remember correctly, the girls didn't have to come back to school for the rest of the school year. It was close to the end anyway. Everyone found out their names pretty quickly. Biggest scandal at that school in decades. There was this younger, smoking hot female teacher at my high school. Her BF was on The Real World, and she did a visit on the show wearing a super skimpy bikini and talking about her BFF's dick. Everyone had already had a crush on her, but this pushed it over the edge. I don't know if she quit teaching, but I don't remember seeing her around school after that year. One of the girls were fucking the IT admin. She was 16 to 17 when that started. Heard an update from an old classmate nearly 20 years later, and not only have they stayed together, they're married, got 3 kids and live the upper middle class suburban dream life. Our science teacher was a porn star in a past life. Someone in the school found a video she was in his dad's porn stash. It was a huge scandal in our conservative town. She was let go, which sucked because she was really an excellent teacher. It became a national news story. She was on Dr. Phil about it. Despite numerous campaigns by the students, she was never hired back. Long story short, a student was caught having sex with a sheep at the tiny farm the school ran for the agricultural elective students. Edit. So, since it's been asked a few times, the only slightly longer part of the story was that the class was, as stated, an agriculture elective. Once a student had completed enough required worksheets, they got to go over to the farm and do some work instead of sitting in class writing. Not exactly easy, but it was nice when the weather was cool. This guy had the class for both morning sessions, so he said he'd just stay over at the farm and get a ride back at the end of the next class. Well, amongst other incidents, he was not the brightest bulb in the box. Seems he lost track of time and the next class came walking up to the barn with him balls deep in the sheep. Word was, the sheep didn't seem to notice. We had a charity thing in high school where you'd raise money for cancer. The amount being raised was shown on a thermometer and every limit would force a teacher to shave their head. On the very top was this French teacher. Anyways, the initiative was due to finish after lunch recess. A bunch of people are in gym shaving their heads and trying to raise money. Bills are flying down from the bleachers and we raised just enough money right at the bell. The French teacher was knocked down and ran away, causing all the students to chase her into the bathroom, banging on the door and shit. She soon after had a bit of a mental breakdown. Someone at school found out her love life profile and she left. Also, some students stole all the money raised in the initiative from the gym. I think this happened right after I graduated, but I was still friends and neighbors with the PE teacher. One day while changing, one of the students thought it would be funny to shit in his own hand, carry it into the gym, and throw it at his friend who had already changed and was waiting for class to start. The teacher was too shocked to do anything at first, but it splattered off the other kid's shirt and then that kid started projectile vomiting. It started a chain reaction, and multiple students started dry heaving and then puking onto the gym floor, running out. The gym was closed down for like 2 weeks and had to be repainted, the hardwood floors refinished. The kid who carried out the shit fest received no punishment from the school and the teacher moved to a different school the next year. Also, the wrestling coach got arrested for possession of child pornography and inappropriate behavior with a few students. The football star at my high school was accused of sexually assaulting a 4-year-old child and went to jail for it based off very little evidence. He was sentenced to 25 years. It was my junior year, and it was his senior year. He had a full-ride scholarship to play football and he, along with everyone else, really thought he'd make it to the NFL. He served 3 years of that sentence when the county's new DA looked over his case and saw that there was basically no evidence, so he was released. This was in summer 2017 and he was officially exonerated last year. Turns out it was his best friend, who looked just like him and lived with him, who did it. Dude is doing really well now. His girlfriend stuck with him through the whole thing and they're married now. There's actually a documentary on Showtime about it that just came out. My first day of 9th grade, a senior took a hit of acid, took his clothes off, ran around naked yelling, "I want to see everyone, I want to see everyone." He was finally chilled out and they got a robe on him. Called his folks. Maybe he was suspended. Same him a few weeks later. 3 years after that he came to our house to install cable TV. My dad always kept some cheap beer around for service people and the like. I gave him and his co-worker and said we didn't have any LSD. He laughed his ass off and said, "That's probably a good thing." We had a football coach fucking one of the cheerleaders. I was so blind to it all. He was my positional coaches and I had respect for him, so I never believed it. He never talked about it and I was friends with the cheerleader and she always denied it. 2 years after graduation they got married because she was already pregnant with their second child. She dropped out of college her first semester and became a stay-at-home mom. Her Facebook page now is just really sad. It has been almost 16 years since we graduated and she still seems miserable. All her dreams just vanished and she is still married to that coach who is getting older and fatter. He is over 60 and she is in her 30s. When I was a freshman I started to secretly date a junior boy on the football team. He was embarrassed by me because I never partied and was in AP classes, chubby with big glasses, etc. Anyways, he tried to pressure me into giving him my virginity one night after his mom had taken us out for dinner. When I refused and stood up to go home, he got very angry and physically tried to keep me from leaving his room. I yelled loud enough for his older brother to hear and brother and mom got him off of me. Mom made dude apologize and then drove me home. By the next week of school, a rumor had gone around that I was having anal sex with some of the football team. The junior boy I had dated had been the one to start this rumor, claiming that he had to break it off with me because I was obsessive. The real scandal ended up happening during a math class that I had with him. He would always make a point to sit as close to me as possible and try to make me watch him touch himself. One day I sat in front of him so I wouldn't have to watch that show. During a movie, the lights were dimmed and all of the sudden I feel something wet on the back of my neck, and running down my back. That pervert had jerked off behind me and put his hand full of cum down the back of my shirt. I jumped up and make a commotion. Fortunately I had a couple other girls who also came forward from different classes with this guy, all younger females, all with perverted stories about his behavior towards them. My dad made a holy hellish scene until the boy was suspended. Much more happened, but I tried to shut it all out. Shit was not flattering like dude tried to play it up as, but fucking nasty. Edit, not a movie. It was one of the projectors common in math classes in the 1990s-2000s. It was a push to even get him suspended. I wasn't even able to get out of having classes with him once he came back. The girlfriend of my best friend was molested one day. It didn't take long for it to get around school, when the police got to investigating the whole situation, and after about a week the molester disappeared from school for multiple months. He came back as a registered sex offender. The molester was someone in our class, and when my best friend found out, he took matters into his own. Molester ended up with a broken nose. Either our vice principal was smashing a senior while sexually assaulting another teacher, and when the story got out to the students, the vice principal tried to break into her room to confront her and she ended up passing out from a panic attack. Or two senior girls were having sex with the town sheriff and his wife, and during a summer morning after leaving the sheriff's house completely wasted on booze, they swerved into oncoming traffic, killing a man on the way to school. Both girls have kids and are married and never showed a glimpse of regret or change of lifestyle after the crash. Edit, was deputy not sheriff, sorry. We had this weird science teacher. He was your standard mid-50s creep, but he had a really bad stroke or something that required part of his skull to be removed, so he had this huge seam on his head from the metal plate. He used to make girls stay behind after class and wash the lab tables while watching them. It happened to me a couple times, but I was never more than just a bit creeped out. The next year, he vanished very quietly. Also, someone started a preposterous rumor that I was pregnant. My mom was 14 when she got pregnant with me, and promised to make my life a living hell if I ever got pregnant as a teen, so that ruined the rest of my teenage years with her. Thanks high school, worst years of my life so far. Not even a scandal, just a widely accepted rumor. English teacher was purported to select one male per senior class to try and woo and sleep with. My friend claimed his older brother was that year's selection, prodding him to strive to do the same. Unfortunately for him, another, uninterested, buddy actually was. Resulting in her petting his arm, giggling at his jokes, bending over in front of him, etc. She left to become a principal at a different district a few years later. A teacher who was always suspected of having inappropriate relationships with students managed to get on the wrong plane with a student during the senior trip. They ended up in Greece when everyone else was in Italy. 9 months later she had a baby but didn't tell anyone who the father was. An English teacher would make out with a student during his planning period while his wife was teaching classes next door. After school, he would make excuses to his wife about having to stay late at school and meet the student at hotel rooms. He was led out of the school in handcuffs in front of the entire school. Funny enough, the cops gave him the opportunity to go out the back door of the school and not make a scene, but he refused. In the auditorium there was this obvious hole in the wall, and when I say hole I mean like a 10 feet by 10 feet square, but it was way up by the roof and back behind the stage curtains. One day my friend said she saw the janitor climbing down from it on a ladder, and she saw where he put the ladder. After school we went back there and sure enough she went straight to the ladder. We climbed up to the hole and there was a pretty big ledge in the hole with a twin-sized mattress covered in stains and a rack of old Playboys and shit. I was very concerned about the janitor after this. My math teacher literally woke up one day, murdered his wife, arranged things so it looked like a suicide, emptied her bank account and went on to have a normal teaching day at school. We even had a mass, Catholic school, for her weeks later, and he faked grief through it all. We found out months later during school recess. It came out a year after I graduated, but the high school band director, short creepy dude in his 30s, had been involved with numerous male students. Only one came forward, a 12-year-old, and he ended up going to prison for 12 years. Got out recently according to the sex offender registry. Based on the picture on there, if he wasn't a bottom before prison, he is now. The mental thing is that he was the toast of all the parents and community for years, and people were holding rallies and donation drives. Nobody speaks about it now. Completely unrelated, a kid, whose father was a school board member, I had a bunch of classes, and played sports, with had a hit list he made when we were in middle school. It was a whole thing, with police and news reports. Months later, he's back. On the plus side, I wasn't on the list because you're always nice and cool. Yeah, me. Why is this relevant? Because his school board member father was charged a few years later with molesting a whole bunch of boys. He ended up shooting himself right before trial. I always assumed that there was some connection there. Sad really.